August 2013 brought us Payday 2, a game that is now 10 years old and is about to retire. Over the years, people have uploaded thousands of different videos to the point where there really is nothing else to talk about. At the time of this recording, we're only a few moments away from witnessing the release of Payday 3, and I feel like there's no better time for a quick summary of my experience with the game. So this video is exactly that. My thoughts on everything that made this game unmatched, and things that I either did not like or straight up would hate to see in the sequel. RNG is a thing players experience in many games, and Payday 2 is not any different in this case. The main goal is to add elements of replayability and surprise. That being said, some games are better off without them, as improper application can kill the gameplay. For example, Celeste. This game is either 99 or arguably 100% skill based, and considering it has the most responsive controls I've ever seen in a platformer, I have to say the developers made the right decision by not including randomness in the title. Payday 2, on the other hand, was not meant to be this way. Or well, at least modern Payday, and RNG is the name of this game. Does it kill the experience? Not at all, it enhances it. On release, the game obviously was not as big as it is, but right now the replayability is out of this world, and the random elements are one of the main reasons. So let's start with the fact that most or all heists have to be replayed. Very often not once, but multiple times in order to experience them fully. That's because the objectives can differ, from very minor stuff like keycard placement to different objectives altogether. And yeah, if you take into consideration how many heists this game has, you know you're in for a ride, because not only do you have to learn and memorize a lot, but also replay the entire thing from start to finish. There's also a lot of variants people hate or love, and if every heist had a single preset, Payday 2 would still be extremely replayable because the amount of content is crazy. But I appreciate the fact that it's there, and it does make for a great aspect of the game. Of course, you can't talk about RNG and not mention dodge, so here's my opinion. I think it made sense in Payday because the game is one big chaos by itself, and it's pretty fun to run around with light armor without getting hit, but I don't want it to be like in Payday 3. For the time being, this game seems to be more team focused already, and kinda slower in gameplay, so I wouldn't mind if it stays that way. I also believe there's a slight problem with the design itself, because dodge, in general, is significantly easier to play than armor, but is also more rewarding, which doesn't make much sense. On lower difficulty levels it doesn't matter much, but on Death Sentence, you're often forced to fade abuse with tanky decks, while Hacker can just do whatever at any point in the game by existing. So if these are ever to be brought back, I'd like for dodge to be more on the weaker side. Back to replayability we go. Different variants, and now it's important to add that most heists can be done in two ways that are nothing like. Well, mostly. Loud is absolutely fantastic, unless you go for the highest difficulty. Pick whatever weapons, skills and the rest of your equipment however you desire, and just shoot everything you see. It is that simple, and there really is not much to add. Shooting hordes is fun enough, and you probably won't get bored quickly. Everybody's different, but Payday's player base has remained chart-breaking for many years now, and I know a lot of players play exactly for that reason. This game is just fun in this regard. Then what about the other side? It is also great in many ways, but not without flaws. So loud can be very simple as long as you follow what I said, but things do change very significantly the moment we start talking about Death Sentence. This is where it goes from very simple to by far the most complex thing about Payday. To play it well, you will need to spend lots of hours on studying the game itself and then practicing it. On Reddit or Steam forums, there's a lot of people who act like Death Sentence is the easiest thing in the world, and all you have to do is just play an OP build to magically stomp the difficulty. But as a newer player, or someone who has only played Death Wish and below, you can completely ignore this because that's bullshit. In theory, yes, you can just run Hacker and never use cover, or Stoic can be somewhat unkillable, but it's never as simple as just press M1 and use cover, as many would claim. The top decks and builds do indeed make things much easier, but your average Joe won't utilize them to this degree. At some point, I thought the same way. I jumped into DS as a new player and learned things fast. Payday 2 was simply my game. But here's the problem. Everybody's different, and I had many good players show me how to get into it properly. This game doesn't have any tutorials, and it will never mention important things you need to know. You have to memorize enemy spawns, assault states, how targeting works, the timing for stuff, and many more things. Nowadays, yes, I and other good players made many guides for just about everything, so it's way easier than years ago, but the point stands. For Death Sentence to become brain dead easy, you will have to practice. I can do Death Sentence in my sleep, and yet in Payday 3 beta, I got owned on very hard difficulty on top of being straight up bad. Even though I'm sure that after learning the game, I will be able to play it while asleep.
Uh-oh.
He's a projectile, and it will trap.
Nice.
Dude.
That was so real. That was so real.
Then we get into stealth, and I have two things to say. I love the fact that it exists. I hate the fact that it's not even 10% as complex as loud. It is core of Payday, there's no doubt about it, and lots of players only ever play because it definitely has some things going for it. but from the objective standpoint, it is neglected as all hell. The entire gameplay is about memorizing looped guard patterns. Most of the skills are loud-based, there's very few stealth-only heists, most weapons are pretty much useless. I have no idea about Payday 3 as I haven't really played nor seen stealth gameplay, but I do hope it gets some solid rework, because it's painful how little depth there is to it in Payday 2. Constant support for the game is probably the main reason why it's so high on the charts to this day. If you were to compare the initial release of this game to the current one, you would easily say the 2013 version is a demo at best. Over the years, the amount of stuff that was added is simply mind-blowing. Hundreds of weapons, heists, tracks, perk decks, and changes is something that can't be ignored, and there's a lot of good stuff to say as it greatly contributed towards replayability just like the other things, but trying too much is not good, and Payday 2 has some peak what the fuck moments. This has to be split into two halves, the early years and the current years. The former is phenomenal in almost every way. Adding more to what's already good is just the right way to go. Who doesn't like more variety when it comes to their gameplay, right? There was also a rework to the game where it abandoned its tactical aspects in favor of turning the game into a full-action horde shooter, but whether you like it or not is really up to you. Personally, I prefer the old Payday. Although I don't exactly hate the modern one, I don't want to see this back in Payday 3, but I don't think it killed Payday 2 because it was still fun despite that. Things take a dark turn when we start talking about the modern DLC, however. Straight to the point, the only reason the content is still being added to this game is to milk money. Nothing else. Most of the new weapons are overpowered on purpose, just so that there's incentive to waste money. Why waste? Because the amount of money you have to spend to buy all of this stuff is horrendous. I literally don't see a single reason why I would buy any of the modern stuff when I can simply get some great games for less. Like, why should I waste over $5 on a single map if I can just get a game I will spend so many hours in instead? Really, I could talk about this forever, but let's get into some modern balance changes. Now this is certainly something. If you're a long-time viewer, you know what I think about damage falloff on the weapons. It is straight up by far the worst change ever done to this game. No matter how I look at it, I see no purpose in it other than annoying the player. Snipers and high damage SMGs are the best weapons in the game, so it would make sense to see them nerfed. So what do we get instead? A Lebensfolge buff. Why? I don't know. It was worse than Contractor, but both weapons were OP nonetheless. Hacker is one of the best, although in my opinion, the best deck in the game. So maybe a nerf? No, Hacker gets a buff instead because reasons? This could go on forever, but the point stands. These changes are just stupid. The game remains stale because for years, the meta either never changed or changed for worse. Why can't we see a day where Biker is the best deck and Stoic the worst? Why can't there be a day where JP36 is the best gun in the game and Akimbo CR805 the worst? Like, every update is just developers changing numbers randomly without any thought put into it, and I really do hope Payday 3 does not follow the same pattern. Then we have the biggest offender in its update 237. This is a complete disaster. As one person said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, what even was the point? Releasing an update to kill the game right before its retirement was about the worst thing they could have done. I'm pretty sure everyone's already said everything there is to say about it, so I'ma just leave it at that. As for the rest, no major complaints. The music is absolutely god tier, there are so many tracks in the game and I think they're all executed with dedication. What's even better is that the soundtrack is great to listen to while doing some daily stuff like driving too, so bonus points for that. The work behind the characters and the voice actors is pretty much peak too. It is easy to take such things for granted, but if you open YouTube and search up voice lines, you'll realize just how much effort there is to it. Mods are a thing completely unrelated to the developers. Some games don't offer modding support to begin with, others allow for some visual changes, and then there's the group of games that go so far that the only limiting factors are your own creativity and coding knowledge. Payday is pretty much that. When you visit the most popular website with mods, you will quickly find out that having hundreds of mods in this game is in fact possible. Of course, mixing the wrong mods can lead to crashes or anomalies in your gameplay, so being cautious is a requirement when playing with the game's files. Anyway, there really is almost nothing you can't find nowadays. From simple meme mods, texture replacements, audio mods and smaller gameplay changes to countless quality of life mods, huge gameplay changes, and most importantly, fixing what the developers couldn't. God bless the modders for that, because they've contributed a great deal to making this game at least twice as good. For example, I don't like the vanilla HUD. The HP and interaction circles are way too big, and something as simple as a HUD mod can fix it. In my case, it's MUI. This is a topic that could go on forever because modding in this game is so wide, but there's a chance you already know that, and if you don't, then you should probably give it a try. Obviously, it does not take a genius to understand that when the game is so moddable, the bad mods will also exist, and in Payday's case they're often absolutely pathetic. And no, I'm not talking about the usual focal point of this. Cheaters exist in just about any multiplayer game. This is inevitable. Even games that are not exactly moddable will have them nonetheless. In fact, this is the very reason why I stopped playing CSGO many years ago and I was pretty good at it. But there's only so much your skill can do against a spin-botting wall hacker. Anyway, Payday is not a PvP game, so things are a bit different. If someone runs stuff like that, a simple kick is all it takes. Of course, joining a lobby with cheats is disrespectful, and just because of that you'd hope there was some system to discourage this, but it's half the issue. The real issue starts when really malicious mods join the game. There are people who will join your game and use cheats to crash your game or freeze your character even if you're playing normally. Thank God most players are not stupid and stay away from this garbage, because technically, if everyone were to download it, the game would turn into an unplayable mess. Unfortunately, with great power comes great responsibility, and clearly not everyone understands that, so we are stuck with some malware roaming the internet. Most of you probably have not met such players, and thankfully that's the case. If you do meet them, then the experience goes down significantly, and those are the times where some might wish modding never existed. If I were to rate it this way, I certainly would place modding as a completely negative thing, but I can't, because at the end of the day, everything I've described is part of the minority. The vast majority of the mods are either great or not really harmless, even if not so good. The optimization has not aged well by itself, and the developers don't care about it. Here's why. No matter how powerful your machine is, you will never have stable high frame rate in this game. Period. The engine is outdated, and the new maps are just horrific in this case. If you play Alaskan Deal, your frames might be okay. If you play any of the new maps, you can simply forget about it entirely. I'm not a developer, so I don't know the entire process of optimizing stuff, but I know a thing or two, and this is just laziness. The engine might have some limits, and the task is not always easy, but there's literally zero effort put into optimizing anything in modern Payday, which sucks. Then there's another issue, and it's how your CPU is utilized. Buying the most expensive CPU won't help you much compared to something from a few years ago, because Payday 2 only utilizes 1 or 2 threads from it, and the thing that matters the most is your clock speed. This is a problem because every generation of CPUs aims to increase their core and thread count primarily, which does literally nothing in this game. Clock speeds do go up from time to time, but they're not the focus. In order to achieve truly stunning performance in this game, you would have to overclock the cores to over 6 GHz, which for your average user is not even possible to begin with. This means that we're stuck with bad optimization and nothing can be done about it. This video was meant to be about 4 times longer at first, and it sucks I couldn't finish the initial project, but life is life, so there's not much I could have done about it. It's not really a full summary, but I feel like the core of my previous script is there, so I'ma let it be. If I had been given the entire September, I feel like I would have done the entire thing. But Payday 3 is almost out, and I wanna focus on it, so let's end it like that. Payday 2 has done many things masterfully, and is definitely one of the best games ever made, but is also far from being perfect in my opinion, so I hope the sequel fixes a lot of the issues. Luckily for us, we are about to find out about its quality soon enough. Goodbye Payday 2, it was a good time. See you all in Payday 3.